Another double shooting tonight, this time in a park in Keswick. We'll hear from our crime analyst, Steve Ryan, coming up tonight.
And shocking video of an auto theft in Mississauga capturing the moment a car thief runs over a man and allegedly steals a Porsche.
And demanding justice for an environmental nightmare. Protesters marched to Queen's Park over mercury poisoning in Grassy Meadows First Nation. We'll tell you more about that.
Plus, the Leafs open their training camp ahead of a brand new season. Could this time be different? We will hear from the team tonight.
You're watching Live at 5.
Good evening. I'm Lindsay Biscaya.
And I'm Lena Latifat. Thank you for joining us here on Live at 5. York Regional Police say there is no threat to the public after 2 people were killed in a double shooting in Keswick Park.
We're going to go live now to CP24's crime analyst, Steve Ryan, who is at the scene tonight at Bayview Park with more. Steve.
Yeah, Lindsay and Alina, we are told by York Regional Police that this possible double homicide occurred this morning at 7:30 in Bayview Park, which is behind me here, and it's situated in a very quiet residential neighborhood up in Keswick. According to police, they received multiple 911 calls just before 7:30 this morning regarding the sound of gunshots. Police arrived on scene and they found 2 adults, genders unknown at this time. Both adults had been shot and both died in the park. Police tell us earlier on that they are looking for suspects, and as we've been reporting, they have said that there is no threat to public safety, and in fact this was an isolated incident. Now, I spoke with residents in this neighborhood throughout the day, and many of them reported hearing many gunshots, multiple gunshots. Some thought it was a car backfiring, but there certainly was more than a dozen people who did hear what we now know was the sound of gunshots just before 7:30 this morning. Here is reaction from one of the residents who I spoke with earlier on, and here is some of the interview that the York Regional Police did with us earlier today as well. Here's both.
Normally, I have 2 dogs. My house is right here. I just walk them through the park every morning around 7:30. Decided actually to sleep in a little bit longer this morning and heard 4 loud gunshots. I thought for a minute it might be duck hunting, which is done at the lake just over there, and but then I realized it's probably not duck hunting. And then shortly after there was another 3 shots. Sounded like it was from 2 different guns. And went outside. The cops were kind of tight-lipped, and then a neighbor told me that he saw a gentleman on the ground. The ambulance was attending to him.
For the public, we can understand there are concerns surrounding this. However, at this time, the 2 deceased parties in the park appears to be, it is isolated. We are not, we are hoping that community members can come forward and provide more information that can help with this investigation. And so there is no threat to the community in here, no threat to the public here.
That clip that we just played of the resident describing the 7 shots that he heard, that's exactly the type of information that police are looking for. So if you do have information, police are advising you to give York Regional Police a call. Again, they have said that this is an isolated incident, no threat to public safety, although we do not know what the motive is, nor do we know any suspect descriptions. But police did tell us earlier today that they are actively searching for a suspect or suspects. Send it back to the desk.
All right, Steve Ryan in Keswick tonight. Steve, thanks so much for this. Police have identified the victims of a deadly double shooting in North York.
26-year-old Ibrahim Handul and 27-year-old Deshaun Walters, both of Toronto, died after they were shot on Driftwood Court near Jane Street yesterday afternoon. Police say that shooting happened during an altercation involving a group of people. 2 firearms were recovered, but there have been no arrests, and police have not released any suspect information.
Well, Peel Police have released video of a brazen daylight auto theft, which appears to show a suspect running over a victim in a stolen luxury SUV. For
the details, we are joined live now by CP24's Phil Perkins, who has more on this somewhat disturbing video, Phil.
Lena, Lindsay, it's disturbing on multiple levels because, as you're going to see in this footage we're about to show you, it takes a certain level of guts for someone to come to your door, knock on the door, act friendly, and then knowing in the back of their minds that they're about to steal your luxury vehicle. In this case, it was a 2022 Porsche Cayenne SUV that the seller was putting up for sale on Auto Trader, which is a very legitimate site. They're not putting it on Kijiji or Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace. Is on Auto Trader. And so this happened back on Friday, September 6th. around 2 p.m. So broad daylight in the Winston Churchill and Eglinton area. As we take a look at the footage here, you see the young woman, as police are describing, as being South Asian, 5'5", 120 pounds. You can see thin build, long black hair, white blouse, brown skirt. Coming up, ringing on the doorbell, telling the seller that she's there to check out the Porsche and that she's waiting for her father to show up. But in the meantime, she wants to check out the vehicle. The video then cuts to the driveway. You can see the Porsche Cayenne there. She's already in the vehicle. The seller trying to get in, as one would. You would accompany someone as they test drive your vehicle or take a look at the interior, but somehow can't get inside. And then once he gets to the rear of the vehicle, the car reverses aggressively, running, pushing the man backwards. Somehow he does not end up under the vehicle. The car reverses, rear ends the vehicles on the other side of the street, struggles to then go forward, to shift into drive, and then eventually drives off. You can also see what police believe is another suspected vehicle, could be an accomplice, a getaway vehicle, the one that got her to the home in the first place. And then the seller doesn't really do much, just kind of is dumbfounded by what had just happened. And so we spoke with Mark Mendelson, a former homicide detective, and this is what he had to say about the entire ordeal.
I think it's fair that if people are going to go into this process of selling vehicles to strangers from their homes, before you let them in the vehicle, there's nothing wrong at all with asking them to produce a driver's license and you being able to compare that photo on the driver's license and taking a picture of it, because that'll provide a date of birth and an address and a full name. And if somebody doesn't want to do that, if they don't want to produce identification and identify themselves, then you should end the discussion, period. Because what we saw here was clearly a planned out affair. This young lady was driven to this location by a second suspect, by an accomplice. She's done this. She said, I'm just waiting for my father to come because he wants to see the vehicle as well. So it all sounded very innocent, I'm sure, at the beginning.
Well, this could change a lot of ways on how people end up selling their vehicles, luxury or not. We've done a lot of these stories, unfortunately, and one thing I've definitely learned from police, if you're selling anything, if it's video games, a guitar, or a Porsche Cayenne, they say probably don't have the person come to your house. Try to sell it somewhere very public where you're going to get a lot of eyes on it, whether it's a shopping mall, a grocery store, or better yet, potentially a police station. Send it back to you guys.
Yeah, I can't believe this happened in this person's driveway. That is wild.
That is CP24's Phil Perkins reporting live for us. Thanks, Phil. Meanwhile, Toronto's police union is releasing a new public awareness campaign today, and it says officers are underpaid and undervalued.
Let's go live now to CP24's Beatrice Spaceman for more. And Beatrice, the TPA says its members put everything on the line for the city. It's time the city does the same for them.
This is really becoming a PR war, Lena and Lindsay, between the Toronto Police Association, the union representing some 7,500 members, and the City of Toronto and the Police Services Board, which is actually negotiating directly with the union to try to hammer out a deal. It's been 8 months of bargaining now, and this bargaining has not proven to be fruitful. And so that's why the Toronto Police Association has now come out, talked to CP24, and says it's going to be launching this 8-week-long campaign, plastering posters all across the city, including these ones we're showing you on the screen, which really, they say, depicts these officers as being underpaid and not being able to afford actually living in the city of Toronto. It's causing a huge retention problem as well for the union, which says about 60 police officers have so far this year already left the Toronto Police Service in favor of working for other forces across Ontario. So here's more from the union head, John Reid, who spoke to CP24 this morning.
So what we're going to be doing is launching a campaign citywide to tell the citizens of Toronto that we need their help. We need them to have their voice heard. You're going to see thousands of ads through the TTC, through media, social media, to get people to understand if we do not stem the tide of officers leaving Toronto now and come up with a good, solid contract, our members deserve to be the highest paid here in Ontario, if not Canada.
The average base salary for a Toronto police officer, Lindsay and Lena, is $109,000. The union says that's about $5,000 less than in other municipalities, what police officers make in other municipalities. And so, for example, if a Toronto police officer wants to make a bit more money and have a lower cost of living, they'll go to municipalities like Barrie or Durham region, for example. The problem is the city says that John Reid is comparing municipalities that have already secured contracts with Toronto Police, with police services in municipalities. And so when Toronto actually reaches a deal with its Toronto Police Union, officers will once again be the highest paid when it comes to municipal services in Toronto. This is a big year when it comes to bargaining with workers that work for the City of Toronto. And so John Burnside, a councillor who was a former police officer and used to sit on the Toronto Police Services Board, says the negotiations and deal with the TTC this summer has now set a precedent. So Toronto police officers expecting that same pay raise that TTC workers got. So here's more from Councillor Burnside.
For me, it's not about whether you're a police officer or a firefighter or a city worker, Union 416. It's about treating everyone fairly and recognizing that we're in a competitive environment for highly trained people. So in terms of the fairness, if you're going to give TTC workers almost, over 13% of in 3 years, I think you need to be very competitive with your police officers.
And so here we are after 8 months of bargaining between the Toronto Police Association, the union, and the city, and now an arbitrator ultimately will come in and try to help hammer out a deal. Back to you.
All right, Beatrice Faisman reporting live tonight. Thank you, Beatrice. Police are launching a pilot in collaboration with the University Health Network, Unity Health Toronto, and Humber River Health.
The one-year program will see patients apprehended under the Mental Health Act transferred to the care of special constables. Police say under the current system, officers must remain at the hospital with the apprehended person, often for several hours. 2 district special constables will now be in the emergency rooms 18 hours a day at Humber River Health, Toronto Western Hospital, and St. Michael's Hospital.
Well, police issued more than 10,000 tickets to drivers during this year's back-to-school safety campaign. The 10-day campaign from September 3rd to the 13th focused on safety in school zones across the city. Tickets were issued for speeding, aggressive driving, and drug or alcohol-related offenses. Police say 9% of the tickets issued were for offenses within 150 meters of a school.
A fire near Broadview and Danforth sent black smoke across the area this morning. Toronto Fire says this 2-alarm fire was at a building under construction at 800 Broadview. Roofing materials, including a tar pot, caught fire. It was knocked down fairly quickly, and there were no injuries reported.
I was still asleep, and I heard the most horrible sound of explosion. And I look out the window, and the flames were up to the sky.
Toronto Fire says the damage was mostly contained to the roof of the building, but there is some water damage that isn't considered significant.
Police continue to investigate a serious early morning crash on the Bayview Bloor off-ramp from the southbound DVP.
Yeah, they say a minivan was westbound on the ramp when it crossed the eastbound lanes and crashed into a guardrail. The 41-year-old woman who was driving the van was taken to hospital with life-threatening injuries. The crash happened before 5:30 and shut down the ramp through the morning rush.
And no injuries, but a van fire tied up traffic on the westbound 401 near Yonge Street this afternoon. This happened in the Express. The fire was quickly extinguished by firefighters.
Well, we are learning more tonight about how a woman was struck by a GO train at Long Branch Station yesterday. It's reported that an express train was traveling on the Lakeshore East line, bypassing the station. A 46-year-old woman was walking near the edge of the platform and was struck by the train. She was taken to hospital with life-threatening injuries.
It's 5:13 now, sitting at 25 degrees. Feels like 30 out there. This is Live at 5.
Coming up, hundreds of people marched to Queen's Park today to call on the provincial government to address mercury poisoning that's been impacting the Grassy Meadows First Nation. We'll tell you more about the message. Welcome back. Hundreds of people marched to Queen's Park today to raise awareness about mercury contamination that's impacted the Grassy Meadows First Nation community for almost 6 decades.
We're going to go live now to CP24's Andrew Brennan, who is at Queen's Park and was at that rally today. Andrew?
Yeah, Lindsay, Lena, there has been commitments also going back decades for the people of Grassy Narrows to have safe drinking water, for them to have the ability to fish without having mercury inside the food they eat. That being said, here we are today where you do have hundreds and hundreds of people, including some coming all the way from the First Nations community in the north, and a caravan that took days to get down here to the legislature in Ontario, for Ontario in Toronto. They wanted their voices to be heard. This is also on the backs of a lawsuit being filed in June, just after new data showed that even now, the wastewater coming from the Dryden paper mill about 100 kilometers away is so filled with more wastewater coupled with the mercury that it's creating an even more dangerous compound that is leaving them also sick to this day. And that lawsuit was filed against the federal and provincial government, saying they are ignoring, according to the claimants, the duty they have under the Indian Act to protect those that have treaty rights. So with all of this in mind, when you're talking about generations now that have been dealing with mercury poisoning, 90%, according to studies, of people that live in Grassy Narrows have symptoms of mercury poisoning now. They say something does need to change, and it needs to change quick. We heard earlier from the First Nations chief, Rudy Turtle, about just how much damage this has caused to his people.
People have a hard time living normal lives because it's affecting their bodies. And secondly, knowing that the river is not clean, like having to eat poisoned fish always plays, on your conscience. So it's not, you're not living a free, normal life as other people do. You're living with poison.
And we have received statements now from the federal and provincial governments. First, from the Indigenous Affairs Minister, Patty Hajdu, saying to the thousands marching today, I hear you and I see you, and my commitment to you remains steadfast. Also getting a statement from a provincial spokesperson saying the Ministry of the Environment, Conservation and Parks remains committed to working with First Nations and stakeholders towards the remediation of mercury contamination in the English and Wabigoon rivers. Now, just to give you an indication of how much damage this is causing, not just in terms of physical health, but mental health. Lena, Lindsay, there are studies that show that the suicide rate in Grassy Narrows is 3 times that of the national Indigenous population, which already on reserve is 3 times higher than the general population. I'll send it back to you.
Yeah, just some disturbing stuff there. CP24's Andrew Brennan reporting live for us. Thanks, Andrew. It is 5:18 now, sitting at 24 degrees. This is Live at 5.
Coming up, a second day of deadly exploding electronic devices across Lebanon. We'll be right back with more. Welcome back. There has been a second round of deadly explosions in Lebanon related to electronic devices detonating.
Lebanon's health ministry says 9 people were killed and over 300 wounded in today's explosions. Associated Press journalists reported multiple explosions at the site of a Beirut funeral for 3 Hezbollah members and a child killed by exploding pagers the day before. Hezbollah officials have blamed Israel for what appeared to be a sophisticated remote attack yesterday. The Israeli military, meanwhile, declined to comment.
And a Taiwanese company says a firm based in Hungary manufactured the pagers that exploded in Lebanon and Syria yesterday, killing 12 and injuring nearly 3,000. Gold Apollo says the pagers were made by a company in Budapest, but it allowed its branding to be printed on the devices used by Hezbollah. And UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres says these explosions suggest that a major military operation could be on the horizon.
The logic of making all these devices explode is to do it as a preemptive strike before a major military operation. So, as important as the event in itself is the indication that this event confirms that there is a serious of a dramatic escalation in Lebanon, and everything must be done to avoid that escalation.
And speaking in Egypt today, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken spoke about the explosions in Lebanon and says ending the Israel-Hamas war is necessary to prevent further conflicts in the region.
The United States did not know about, nor was it involved in these incidents, and we're still gathering the information and gathering the facts. Broadly speaking, we've been very clear, and we remain very clear, about the importance of all parties avoiding any steps that could further escalate the conflict that we're trying to resolve in Gaza, to see it spread to other fronts. It's clearly not in the interest of anyone involved to see that happen.
Blinken says out of 18 paragraphs in the proposed ceasefire deal, 15 of them have been agreed upon, and he highlighted the importance of getting the agreement across the finish line.
It is 5:23 right now, sitting at 24 degrees. This is Live at 5.
Well, the Leafs have opened their training camp ahead of the new season. We'll hear from the team coming right up. Stay with us.
Welcome back. The Leafs have officially opened their training camp ahead of the new season.
And we heard from some key members of the team today. CP24's Kayla Williams has been following the story from the Ford Performance Center. So how did the team look today, Kayla?
Well, it was interesting, Lena and Lindsay. I had a chance to see some of the guys walking in and out of these hallways right where we're standing earlier this morning. So we saw Captain Austin Matthews as well as Mitch Marner and some of the new guys. So overall, the question of how are they looking? Well, that's still yet to be seen. You know, the chemistry and how they're going to gel on the ice, that's coming up in the next few days. And of course, with the preseason just a few days away, starting on Sunday night. But here at the Ford Performance Center right now, it's actually bustling with some of the future stars of the NHL, with the young guys now hitting the ice. But earlier today, we heard from the likes of Austin Matthews, as well as the front office of the Maple Leafs, talking about their expectations and hopes for this 2024-25 season. Take a listen.
I've been put in this role, in this situation, because of who I am and you know, just the continual evolution of myself as a person and as a player. So I don't think there's really stuff I need to go in and just completely change. I think it's just continue to try to be a better version of myself and take steps in different areas as a player and as a leader, you know, as we start the season, and just continue to learn.
And I don't think that there's anything wrong with players or teams coming in and saying our goal is to win the Stanley Cup. We're certainly aware of the results we've had here in the past, and we've come back with the determination to get that job done. But I'd be more concerned if our players are coming in here and saying our goal is to get to the second round, or our goal is to get to the third round. We know that there can only be one winner every season, but there are several teams that are in the situation where they're coming in here and saying, rightfully so, that the goal is to win the Stanley Cup.
So yeah, Lindsay, Lena, the goal always being the Stanley Cup, but lots of changes for the Maple Leafs, a new captain, a brand new head coach in Craig Berube. So time will definitely tell. And as far as the preseason goes, as I mentioned, just a few days away, Sunday night at Scotiabank Arena versus the Ottawa Senators. We'll send it back inside to you.
All right, say hi to all the dancing kids behind you, Kayla. Kayla Williams live at the Ford Performance Center tonight. Thanks.
Well, another double shooting tonight, this time in a park in Keswick. We will hear from Steve Ryan coming up in moments. Stay with us.
You're watching Live at 5. We'll be right back.
Another double shooting tonight, this time in a park in Keswick. We will hear from Steve Ryan coming up in moments.
Shocking video of an auto theft in Mississauga capturing the moment a car thief runs over a man and allegedly steals a Porsche.
And demanding justice for an environmental nightmare. Protesters marched to Queen's Park over mercury poisoning in Grassy Meadows First Nation.
Plus, the Leafs open their training camp ahead of a brand new season. Could this time be different? We'll hear from the players.
This is Live at 5.
Good evening, and thanks so much for joining us. I'm Lena Latifat.
And I'm Lindsay Biscaya. Welcome to Live at 5. York Regional Police say there is no threat to the public after 2 people were killed in a double shooting in Keswick Park.
Yeah, let's go right to our crime analyst, Steve Ryan, who's at the scene at Bayview Park this evening with the very latest. Steve, what can you tell us?
Well, Lena, right now the York Regional Police are considering this to be a double homicide. The police tell us that it happened at approximately 7:30 this morning in Bayview Park, which is behind me here in this quiet residential neighborhood up in Keswick. The call came in at 7:30 regarding the sound of gunshots. Several police officers responded to the scene, and we are told that they found that 2 adult people. Both had been shot. Both were pronounced dead at the scene here, and police say that this is believed to be an isolated incident and that they are actively searching for a suspect or suspects, and that there is no threat to public safety. Now, I spoke with many residents throughout the day up here in this neighborhood, and many described to me hearing multiple shots. One man said that he heard 7 shots. He counted 4. He said there was a pause, and then there was 3 more. He said that he believed, based on his limited experience with guns, that there were 2 guns. And he said because the caliber of the noise was different from the separation between the first volley of shots and then the last 3 shots. So I did ask the police during a press conference today if 2 guns were believed to be used, and the officer said that it was too early to confirm that, but it was a very good possibility that there were multiple firearms involved. Here is reaction from one of the local residents I spoke with today, and here is some of the press conference that we heard from the York Regional Police earlier on today as well. Here's both.
Everybody's definitely shaken. This is very, very, very scary, and I pray this never happens again because, 2 lives are now lost, and there's active shooters or active weapons out there somewhere. Right. So it's definitely scary.
When officers arrived, 2 adults were located in Bayview Park suffering from gunshot wounds and were pronounced deceased at the scene. Our homicide unit is engaged, and we are appealing to members of the community if they have any dash cam footage of the area at the time or security cameras at their house to please contact investigators.
Isolated incident and no threat to public safety. 2 very important statements made by police to this community, and they are actively searching for a suspect or suspects, and they are asking for anyone with information to give them a call. So back to this.
All right, Steve Ryan reporting live tonight. Thank you so much for this, Steve. Well, police have identified the victims of a deadly double shooting in North York. 26-year-old Ibrahim Handouli and 27-year-old Deshaun Walters, both of Toronto, died after they were shot on Driftwood Court near Jane Street yesterday afternoon. Police say the shooting happened during an altercation involving a group of people. 2 firearms were recovered, but there have been no arrests, and police have not released any suspect information.
Peel police have released video of a brazen daylight auto theft, which appears to show a suspect running over a victim in a stolen luxury SUV. For the details on this, we are joined live by CP24's Phil Perkins, who also has more on that video that we saw as well. Phil.
It's absolutely wild video for multiple reasons, Lindsay and Lena. This happened back on Friday, September 6th at 2 o'clock in the afternoon outside, presumably the seller's home at Winston Churchill and Eglinton. What we know is that someone came up to the door, knocked on it, saying that they want to check out his 2022 Porsche Cayenne that he had on sale on Auto Trader. And then this happened. So that's the result of someone supposedly trying to check out the vehicle. So this woman, who Peel police are describing as South Asian, 5'5", 120 pounds, with a thin build, long black hair, wearing a white blouse and brown skirt, came up to the door, knocked on the door, saying that she wants to check out the Cayenne. She said that she's waiting for her father. In the meantime, she wants to check out the vehicle. They then cut to the driveway, the seller's driveway. The woman is apparently inside the vehicle. The seller tries to get in. Doors are locked. He goes to the back of the car, and then right there you can see abruptly reverses, forcefully pushing the man backwards. Amazingly, he is not underneath the vehicle. It rear ends the cars that are parked on the opposite side of the vehicle, then struggles to then get out, put itself into the drive position, and then drives off with another suspected vehicle, potentially the vehicle that drove her there in the first place. So police are looking for that 2022 Porsche Cayenne, as well as the gray SUV that seemingly was waiting for her. It looks like an Audi SUV. We spoke with Mark Mendelson, a former homicide detective, with more on this situation.
Well, you shouldn't do it alone. You should always have somebody with you. You should have somebody possibly taking a vehicle or a picture or getting the license plate of the car that pulls up, from this prospective buyer. Anything that you can identify them with later on should things go off their rails. Now, in this case, the good news is that there's a very good image of this young woman, suspect number 1, if you will, from the Ring doorbell. And, that gives the police a lot of work, a lot of evidence to work with. Plus, it's incumbent upon people to look at these videos on CP24 and see if they recognize that individual. If they do, call Peel Region.
And this is happening, Lena, as Peel region is reporting that there is a bit of a decrease in auto thefts happening in that region. In the first 5 months of 2023, there's around 3,500 auto thefts. First 5 months of this year, it's around 3,300. But this one definitely takes the cake as the most unique and most conniving auto theft that we've seen thus far. Back to you, Lena.
Wow. All right. Phil Perkins live in Peel region. That is some wild video. Thanks, Phil. Well, Toronto's police union releasing a new public awareness campaign today. It says its officers are underpaid and undervalued. Let's go live now to CP24's Beatrice Faisman for more on this. Beatrice, the timing here is worth noting.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the timing is really, it's a PR campaign that's been put out by the union, and it comes in the midst of negotiations or broken down negotiations between the union and the Toronto Police Services Board, which negotiates on behalf of the city. And so the head of the police union reaching out to CP24, putting out this campaign called Keeping Toronto Safe. And what the police union is going to be doing, essentially going to be plastering the city with flyers, which paint its officers as overworked, underappreciated, and underpaid. And here's what we heard from the head of the union, John Reid, who was here on CP24 this morning. He talked about some of the key concerns, which also include retention, and he tells us exactly who he's blaming that this deal hasn't gotten done after 8 months of bargaining. Listen.
We had a membership meeting last night. Our members are furious, and this is a slap in the face to our members that the City of Toronto and the Police Services Board will not come to the table. And I lay this squarely at the feet of Ann Morgan, Shelley Carroll, and the mayor, who I've asked for help to try and get this resolved and got nothing back from them. And I think it's about time that the city come to the table, the mayor shows some leadership, and move forward with this.
Speaking of Shelley Carroll, she's, of course, the budget chief. She's got a bit of a unique lens on how this is being handled with a broader understanding of the fiscal challenges for the city. She now sits on the Toronto Police Services Board. She's a recent appointee. She says the city is not refusing to bargain, that she hasn't gotten any invites for these long marathon meetings that we typically see happen at places like the Sheraton Hotel, for example. She says John Reid is comparing officers being paid in other municipalities which have already secured deals with their police services, and she says she's confident that once the two sides actually reach a deal, that Toronto's police officers will be the highest paid when it comes to municipal police services. By the way, the base salary for an average Toronto police officer here, $109,000, about $5,000 less than some other municipalities nearby are currently paying their officers. Here's what we heard from the budget chief.
What Torontonians want is a safe community, and they hope that wherever possible, we'll do it in such a way that they can afford it and continue to raise their families and keep a roof over their own heads. That's what Torontonians want, and that's the work that the Toronto Police Service Board is focused on, and I dare say the Mayor and Council is focused on. And so in all of these things, those are the things we'll take into account, and what we hope is that that's what the arbitrator takes into account.
So 8 months of bargaining already, an 8-week campaign now underway as the police union tries to get the public on its side. And now an arbitrator has been called in to see if the two sides can ultimately reach a deal. Lena and Lindsay, back to you.
Interesting stuff. Okay, CP24's Beatrice Faisman reporting live for us. Thanks, Bea. It is 5:40 now, sitting at 24 degrees. This is Live at 5.
Pearson Airport ranks below average in customer satisfaction again, according to a new survey. We're going to take a closer look. Pearson Airport ranks below average in customer satisfaction, once again, according to a new survey from J.D. Power.
Pearson was second to last among North America's mega airports with a score of 559 on a 1,000-point scale. Now, the survey looked at several categories, including ease of travel through the airport, departure experience, and food, beverage, and retail facilities. Minneapolis St. Paul International topped that list, followed by Detroit Metropolitan Wayne County Airport and Phoenix Sky Harbor International.
We've been doing this study for 26 years now. We have people who are unsatisfied with the results. You know, the biggest impact on Toronto Pearson is the fact that there's a great deal, many more passengers traveling through Toronto and through Montreal. As a matter of fact, as there were last year, I believe it was 25 or 26% more people going through Pearson and about 33% more going through Montreal. And that has a huge impact on satisfaction. If the airport is crowded, it's harder to get to, parking lots close, people get confused by the signs and directions because they're trying to dodge travelers, TSA and security takes longer.
A statement from Pearson spokesperson reads in part, Toronto Pearson is deeply committed to operational excellence, passenger experience, and customer satisfaction. We have questions about the credibility of the methodology used to determine the J.D. Power ranking. The survey is heavily skewed toward U.S. travelers and doesn't verify whether respondents have actually traveled through Pearson Airport.
In other news, Bell has sold its stake in Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment to Rogers for $4.7 billion.
Yeah, Bell and Rogers had both owned 37.5% of the Leafs, Raptors, TFC, but the deal will now give Rogers a controlling 75% stake. Larry Tannenbaum owns 20%. Also within the deal, Bell Media has secured content rights for up to 50% of Leafs and Raptors games for the next 20 years. All of this is subject to approval, with the deal expected to close midway through next year. We should note Bell is the parent company of CP24.
Time now is 5:45, sitting at 24 degrees. This is Live at 5.
It appears Canadians will not be plunged into an early federal election next week when Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives move a motion of non-confidence. We'll explain next. Welcome back. It appears Canadians will not be plunged into an early federal election next week.
L'Assemblée nationale du Québec, de façon unanime, dit votre employé.
Bloc Québécois leader Yves-François Blanchet says his party will vote against a Conservative motion of non-confidence in the government. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre has said he will put forward such a motion for debate next Tuesday in a bid to bring down the government and then force an election. Blanchet says he and his MPs work for Quebec, not the Conservatives. The NDP, meanwhile, hasn't signaled which way they will vote on the motion.
And for a closer look at this, we're joined live tonight by Laurie Williams, Associate Professor at Mount Royal University. Things were interesting a couple hours ago until the Bloc Québécois pretty much threw water on Pierre Poilievre's upcoming vote. So what is this about now, Laurie? Is this just political theater at this point?
Yeah, well, of course, Pierre Poilievre has a keen interest in forcing an election. He's talking about that daily. His rhetoric has become quite a bit more combative, and he might have actually made an alliance or support for that motion less likely simply because of the comments that he's made about Jagmeet Singh recently. The Bloc Québécois has no interest in helping the Conservatives. They said that before this. If it's in their interest to force an election or vote against the government, they will do so. If it's in their interest to work with the government and to gain concessions from them, they will do that. And they've been quite clear in terms of what their interests are, what Quebecers' interests are, and that they are quite at odds with the Conservatives, saying that Conservative values are not Quebec values.
Meanwhile, NDP leader Jagmeet Singh pretty moot at this point in terms of what will happen next week if this vote is put forward. He's obviously been pushed on this a lot ever since that Sublime Confidence deal was ended. Where do you think he'll go? What do you think will happen?
There are a few options here. He could have a party disciplined vote where they vote for or against the motion for the government, or they vote against the motion against the Conservatives. Or he could make it a free vote where individual NDP members vote as they wish, or they could decide not to show up. There are a few options available to them here. And the trick for him is that if he personally votes or wants his members to vote with the government, or in other words, vote against the motion, then questions will start to emerge about, well, wait a minute, didn't you say that this government was dishonest and that you could no longer work with them and the deal had to be torn up? He's going to, every time there's a motion like this, every time there's a finance matter, what would be deemed a non-confidence vote, he's going to have to justify supporting the government each and every time that happens. That's why he entered the supply and confidence agreement, so he wouldn't have to explain every time there was a vote why he was supporting the government. And now he's going to have to justify each and every vote why he does or does not support the government.
Laurie, no matter which way you look at this, there is one clear takeaway, and that is Justin Trudeau seems to be running out of time. The calls for him to resign, or rather to, call for an election, are growing louder. How do the Liberals then get through the next couple of months? How do they stay on message?
Well, they're just going to focus on governing, saying that what they're doing is what Canadians want. They're going to try to generate a bit more support, win some of that support back from the Conservatives. But of course, they've got a double-digit lead to try to eat into, and that's going to be a real challenge, particularly given the signal that was sent by these two by-elections.
Sorry, Laurie, do you feel as though they really are trying to kind of gain back support? I mean, after losing that one by-election in Montreal, of course, we heard from Justin Trudeau, from Melanie Joly, other cabinet ministers saying we need to do better. We're listening to Canadians. This obviously shows that Canadians are unhappy. But do you feel that they're really making any movements or any big plays to try to win Canadians back over?
Well, there are no big plays yet. Presumably, they said enough in the caucus retreat to persuade some of their members to sort of unify behind Justin Trudeau. Whether that continues or not, of course, is an open question. We know that Mark Carney was consulted to try to find a strategy to go forward. They are going to have to persuade Canadians that they are worth another mandate or that they're doing a good job. And that's going to take a little bit of a reset, which may or may not be possible. They've made a lot of attempts up until this point, and it hasn't moved the needle. So it remains to be seen whether any strategic moves from here forward are actually going to make a difference. Because even if they do make progress on inflation, even if interest rates are coming down, people are still struggling with affordability. And, they're paying, in some cases, 20% more than they were a couple of years ago, and that can't be reversed. So affordability alone makes this a really difficult calculation for them.
Absolutely. Laurie Williams, Associate Professor at Mount Royal University. Thanks so much for your time and your perspective tonight.
Oh, thank you.
Time now is 5:53, sitting at 24 degrees. This is Live at 5.
The Leafs have opened their training camp ahead of a brand new season. We'll hear from the team coming up with Kayla Williams. Welcome back. The Leafs have officially opened their training camp ahead of the new season, and we heard from some key members of the team today.
Yeah, and CP24's Kayla Williams has more from the Ford Performance Center, where we heard from the new captain of the team as well. Kayla.
Yeah, that's right. Austin Matthews leaning into this new role on the team as captain officially for this season. But of course, he's been a staple and really the cornerstone of this team for many years now. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see him with that capital C on his jersey. But earlier today, it was definitely exciting times here, especially for Leafs Nation counting down. It was media day for the guys. And so they were here decked out in their full uniforms, taking photos, doing all the videos, and of course, speaking to the media today ahead of their official training camp and, of course, preseason. That goes down on Sunday night as they'll take on the Ottawa Senators. But here's more from Austin Matthews as he was talking about being awarded the title of captain for this season and what he's expecting out of himself.
I've been put in this role, in this situation, because of who I am and just the continual evolution of myself as a person and as a player. So I don't think there's really stuff I need to go in and just completely change. I think it's just continue to try to be a better version of myself and take steps in different areas as a player and as a leader, as we start the season and just continue to learn.
So, of course, we know it is still so early what the Maple Leafs will do this season. It is yet to be seen, of course, but it is still a very exciting time. And, of course, an exciting time here at the Ford Performance Center as the future NHL and WPHL stars are on the ice right now. But Lena and Lindsay, of course, the big question, is this the year? Could it be the year? If I had the answer to that question, I think I'd be a pretty rich woman.
Yeah, I think so, too.
There's still some time. Some time to go before that moment.
I'm an eternal optimist, so I'm going to go with, it could happen. Who knows? This could be the year, right, Kayla?
You and me both, Lena. I'm definitely a glasses half full kind of girl, but we will wait and see.
All right, Kayla Williams reporting live in Etobicoke. Thanks so much, Kayla. Well, more restaurants in the GTA are now eligible to be recognized by the Michelin Guide.
The Michelin Guide's inspectors are now venturing outside of Toronto's city limits to find the best cuisine. Destination Toronto made the announcement this morning, hours before Michelin is set to release its third annual guide for the area. Currently, the city boasts 13 restaurants with 1 star and 1 restaurant with too, and that is Sushi Masaki Saito.
Okay, this is great news for foodies all over, not just in Toronto, but outside as well,
exactly.
the GTA. Okay, it's 5:59, 24 degrees, feeling more like 29 out there. It's a beautiful night. You're watching CP24.
Thanks for watching. CTV News at 6 is next.